What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be talking about Barak Lurie again. If you guys don't know, we've previously covered Barak Lurie and how much of a dipshit he is. Well, he's coming through today telling atheists that they have absolutely no moral values whatsoever. You heard that right. We got a bigoted Christian that's going to tell atheists about morals. But Barak is going to go so far as to say that atheists shouldn't believe in morality, or shouldn't have a moral foundation, that we should be just completely absent of all moral knowledge. So, if y'all heathens want to fuck around and find out how much of a bigoted dipshit Barak Lurie is, then please stay tuned. Alright, heathens, before we get into the video today, I did want to kind of lay out like an atheist kind of view, or more or less a secular kind of view on morality. You see, morality exists whether or not a God exists. Morality is completely separated from the concept of God. All throughout Christian history, you see a changing set of morals that comprise the moral foundation that they claim is absolute. Depending on the time and place in which you investigate the Christian moral foundation, you could have a totally different set of morals. This is because a moral foundation is a product of a higher functioning central nervous system. And humans are not the only ones with moral foundations. You can also find other animals in the animal kingdom that also have moral foundations, however primitive they may be. That totally makes sense on the idea that morals come from a mind, not from God. If there were no minds here in this universe or on planet Earth, then there would be no morals. Things wouldn't be morally good or morally bad. It requires a mind to question whether or not something is good or bad in order for something to be deemed good or bad. This is an example of the subjective nature of morality. So just to start off this video, atheists definitely have morals, atheists have a moral foundation, and atheists can determine whether actions are morally good or bad. And that's because we all use our own moral foundation in which to judge those actions. Alright, let's get to this bigot's video.
Folks, I'm going to say something that's very harsh, or seems to be very harsh. Atheists are not moral people.
Yes, that does sound pretty harsh. I really don't know how you can argue around the fact that this sounds harsh. To say that atheists are not moral people, we all know what you mean. Whenever somebody references somebody else as a moral person, it's normally a good moral person, or it's just in a positive light that they're mentioning this. You never say someone's a moral person whenever they're doing something wrong or bad, right? So he's saying that atheists are not good, which, to be fair, it is in line with what his Bible says, because there is a verse in the Bible that says that atheists can do no good. So obviously, if God says that atheists are just inherently bad, they could do no good no matter what they've ever done in their lives, that obviously means that atheists are not good moral people.
It does sound harsh, doesn't it? But let me rephrase it for you. Atheists are not people of morals.
Did you change it? Yes. Is it better? Not really. We are people of morals because we're people. So what you said here is just flat out wrong. To say that somebody doesn't have morals or is absent of morals is to claim that they're sociopathic, or they can't really determine whether or not something is good or bad. But that's not really the case, and to call all atheists sociopathic is just a hasty generalization, and it kind of makes you a dick.
There's a difference. They don't believe in morality.
I totally believe in morality, so you're just flat out fucking wrong.
And they shouldn't believe in morality, because morality comes from God. All the sense of morality that you have, the notion that you should not kill, that you should not steal, should not lie, should not commit adultery, come from the Ten Commandments.
Bull fucking shit. I just gotta call it like I see it. That's fucking bullshit. For one thing, all of those values that you just listed off definitely come prior to the Ten Commandments. Those are enshrined in like the laws of Hammurabi. So they do not stem from the Ten Commandments. If anything, the Ten Commandments, well, minus the first like 4 commandments, because those are just sucking some god dick. But the rest of the commandments can be found in other societies at that time. So no, they do not stem from this. But also I would challenge you to point out how the Bible embodies any of those. At various times throughout the Bible, you have his chosen people either being directly commanded or directly violating any of those things that he says are very basic ideas of morality that come from God. God himself commands the Israelites to kill other people. God himself commands the Israelites to do a fuck ton of bad shit. God has laid down laws that make it perfectly fine for you to own another person. We would find that abhorrent now, but according to the Old Testament, it was just fine to purchase a foreigner or to even enslave your fellow Hebrew under the right conditions. You don't even have to let those Hebrew slaves go if you don't wanna. So no, it's not just some kind of simple, God says don't kill, so don't kill. God technically said don't murder your fellow person. Like, don't murder your fellow Israelite is what he really meant in the Ten Commandments. It's perfectly fine if you want to go out and kill somebody of another nation or enslave that person. Those are totally fine things. So I'm just going to have to stick with calling bullshit on your whole Ten Commandments enshrine the absolute morals of God. They don't, because God has commanded that the Israelites violate any number of those in the general way that a lot of Christians think about the Ten Commandments.
If you don't believe in God, there is no need to have morality.
There is absolutely a need to have morality without God. We all determine our own moral foundations, and we live in a society, and therefore we share some common sense of morality. All successful societies have some kind of common thread that allow that society to be successful. But that doesn't mean that God had to dictate what the rules are for a successful society. These are just things that allow societies to grow and survive and thrive. So yes, we absolutely do need morality. We've had this sense of morality ever since Homo sapiens developed in Africa. Because we're a social species. And because we're a social species, we have to obey some kind of rules in order for the group to survive.
In fact, as Friedrich Nietzsche said in his book, Beyond Good and Evil, that we need to go beyond good and evil, any senses of those things. And that is exactly what Hitler decided to do when he adopted Nietzsche's ideas.
One, I don't give a fuck what Nietzsche says, okay? I know a lot of people like to throw around different quotes from Nietzsche to make some kind of points, but ultimately, I personally really don't give a fuck what Nietzsche says about anything. 2, Hitler was Catholic. I know that some people watching this might be screaming at me that, no, Hitler wasn't Catholic, but if you actually read up like on Mein Kampf or anything that Hitler said during his reign, you could definitely tell that while maybe not a mainstream Catholic or maybe even not a strictly devout Catholic, he was still very Christian. So you cannot use Hitler in order to prove that atheists require no morality or atheists shouldn't believe in morality, because Hitler was not an atheist.
And implemented the famous final solution of the Holocaust, killing millions of people. He felt that there was no good or evil. All that was necessary, all that was right in the eyes of Hitler and other fascists and other communists for that matter, and all atheists who'd ever control the country, was that the mission be complete, that the state be serviced.
Well, no, so that would be state atheism, and so that's not like an atheist in power. That is somebody who has made the state kind of like a god, in that the people worship the state in the same way that somebody would worship a god. That's state atheism. That is not what an atheist is. Second, again, Hitler was not an atheist. Hitler was very, very Christian. And even by Christian standards, what Hitler did was perfectly fine. I mean, Hitler was exterminating a whole group of people. I could probably count on two hands the number of times God ordered the Israelite people to exterminate completely an entire group of people, like the Ammonites, the Midianites, the Canaanites. All of these knights out there were supposedly exterminated by the Israelites on a command from God. So I really don't understand how fucking assholes like Barak Lurie can sit there and be like, oh, this is because of atheism. Atheists shouldn't have any kind of morals because of whatever in the fuck I'm about to say here. It just simply doesn't make any kind of sense to blame this on atheists or to say that all atheists act this way. That's just ridiculous and insanely bigoted.
Everything was in the interests of the state. And so if you were infirm, didn't produce anything for the state, you were not necessary and you needed to go one way or the other. There is no morality in atheism. It's a pretense. It's a world that the atheist may want to live in. He doesn't want to be killed. He doesn't want anyone to steal from him. He doesn't want to be raped or lied to or have his wife cheat on him or otherwise. I get that. But that is the world that you live in if you are an atheist.
So are you saying that the world that we live in is a world with morals, but atheists don't want to live in a world with morals? I mean, I've spent the last few minutes here describing how atheists definitely have morals and can determine actions to be either morally good, bad, or neutral. So I don't understand what you're trying to say here, other than you're taking the whole idea that morality isn't inherent to atheism. Well, that's primarily because atheism is just the answer to a single question, whether or not you believe in a God. So, of course, atheism in and of itself is not concerned with morality, but that does not mean that morality shouldn't exist if somebody is an atheist. An atheist is just one part of the identity of a person that is an atheist. I mean, they have a plethora of other things that describe them, including a moral foundation.
You can't have it both ways. I said it many times before when I was an atheist. I'm an atheist, but thank God so few other people are.
Bullshit. You were never a fucking atheist there, Barak. You just simply weren't. Because I've never met an atheist that is sitting there like, I'm an atheist, but I'm glad everybody else has morals and believes in God because otherwise they'd be going around killing fucking people everywhere. When I look at the Bible, I see the Israelites going everywhere and killing everybody at the behest of God. I don't understand this whole concept that atheists lack morals or should lack morals. It kind of seems to me like Christians are the ones, or theists that believe in these holy books like the Quran and the Bible. It kind of seems like y'all let some ambiguous figure that other people tell you is God make your moral decisions for you. I'm sorry, but I reject that shit, and I just make my own moral decisions depending on how I feel about some action that is taken. I decide for myself. If that means that I don't have morals, then fucking fine. But I'm gonna make my own decisions about morality. I'm not gonna let some ambiguous deity figure that Grandpa Joe over there tells me is the God of this universe. I'm not gonna let that motherfucker tell me what is morally good or bad. I'm going to make my own decisions.
Because I knew a world without God was a world without morals.
I don't understand how you knew that a world without God was a world without morals. Because people that don't believe in God still exhibit moral foundations. They still determine whether or not something's good, bad, or neutral. Like, those are still things that happen. So without a God existing, people would just be the same. People would still determine whether or not actions are moral or immoral. These are things that would still happen if everybody knew God didn't exist.
It's a world without good and evil. So you have this interesting pretext of atheists who insist that they're good people. But you say, why? Why are you a good person?
Why am I a good person? Because that's how I was brought up. I don't think that just because there's no God, there's no reason to be a good moral person. We live in a society. I have empathy Like, I exhibit empathy. I experience empathy for other people. And I mean, this is all just about what it means to be a social species and live in a society. I mean, if every single atheist just didn't have any kind of morals whatsoever, never felt bad or good about any action that they took. I mean, you're saying that we're all sociopaths, and I guess we all need to go and see a psychiatrist, or we all need to be told by somebody else that something is good or bad to do. And that's just simply not the case. So I'm really confused by this entire fucking video.
What makes this or that person a good person? Why does goodness matter to you?
Well, typically, what makes a person good or bad is how closely they follow whatever I determine to be good or bad. But this also exhibits why there are some Christians out there that think that there are some things that are actually morally neutral are bad, because we all use our own moral foundation to make these determinations. But like I said before, in a society, for that society to thrive and survive, you need this common thread of morality. This common moral foundation where everybody agrees that it's wrong to murder your neighbor, or it's wrong to go out and grape people, right? Like, this is just a common sense thing at this point, because we've all grown up in these societies. So what makes somebody a morally good person? I would say that it's any person that takes actions that are either neutral to them and the surrounding population, or good for them or the surrounding population. Those actions also don't cause harm to others. That's the important thing. I consider something to be immoral if it causes harm to other people, either through your actions or through indirect actions that you caused. So that's how I determine whether or not somebody's morally good or bad. But he's also kind of presenting a false dichotomy here, because you could be morally neutral. I mean, you could not do good things or bad things. You're just fucking neutral. So, I mean, keep that in mind. I feel like what he's saying here is that without God, there's no way that you can determine whether or not somebody's good or bad, because they're not following the laws in a book that was written almost 2,000 years ago. Are you fucking serious? I don't need fucking idiotic goat herders and shit and rabbis from 1 BCE to 200 AD telling me what it means to be a good moral person. I don't need to live in that society's idea of morals. Like, I need to live in the here and now. And so do you. I don't see your ass going around killing foreigners. But hell, that's what God would want. And I know that because that's what God commanded the Israelites to do.
It's all about survival of the fittest for you, isn't it?
See, dipshits like this never really understand what survival of the fittest mean. Okay, for one thing, survival of the fittest is about the best adapted organism to live in the environment in which it lives. So survival of the fittest is not about might makes right, or, you know, how quickly you can kill another creature or something like that. I mean, it's just about whoever's best fitted to survive in the environment in which they live. That's it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you got to be strong about it.
We are no different than the animals. So therefore, there is no such thing as beauty, art, free will, consciousness, for that matter, or any sense of improvement of the species.
That's ridiculous. All of those things are still very real without a God. So I don't know where in the fuck he gets this idea that just because atheists don't believe in a God, beauty, free will, or, well, the faux free will, the ability to choose things, and all the other shit that he mentioned. Why do those not exist if you don't believe in a God? I feel like he's really portraying atheists in an incredibly negative light that should be a red flag to any reasonable person nowadays.
And very importantly, there is no such thing as morality. Why would there be?
Why would there be? Well, we're a social species. We for the most part, everybody experiences empathy. So we can empathize with our fellow man. We live in a society, we're a social species, and we want to thrive. We want to survive. We want the human species to grow, obviously, by reproducing and all this other shit, and by advancing technology and all this other stuff, moving farther and farther away from the fucking ignorant rabbis that wrote your holy book. I mean, in these ways do we show that everything that you're saying in this video is just bullshit.
Morality comes to us from the Ten Commandments.
No, they don't. Because all of the things that you say are moral in the Ten Commandments come with, one, caveats, and two, the fact that they stem from previous societal rules and laws. I always, talk about the laws of Hammurabi, the Code of Hammurabi. But that's a perfect example of how everything in the Ten Commandments could be found elsewhere that predate the Ten Commandments.
Every sense that you have is about the Ten Commandments. That's the main point I want to deliver in this message. So having received the benefits of a world with morality, they now want to pretend as if the deliverer of the morality, the sense of morals that they now want to embrace, that he doesn't exist. It's like a child saying, I don't believe in parenthood, even though he has now been raised by his parents and who otherwise has food and clothing on his back, but I don't believe in parenthood all of a sudden. It's exactly the same thing.
It is not exactly the same thing. That's so far from a good analogy that, fuck, you can make almost any other analogy and it would be a better analogy than the shit that you just said. Here's a good question for you there, Barak. If God laid down the absolute foundation for morality in the Ten Commandments, why is don't grape women in the Ten Commandments? Or don't grape anybody. Like, that could have easily been in the Ten Commandments. He could have laid that down right at the start. I mean, I get it. He wants the one cock-sucking one at the top, right? I am your God, suck my cock every single day. He does not have to put that 4 times, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. He could have freed up 3 of those commandments and had one of them, hey, I know this is going to be a problem later. Don't grape anybody, especially children, because the OG Christians are definitely going to do that shit all the time. Even if they get caught, they're just going to recycle all of these pedophiles and send them all over the place. So just don't grape anybody. You deserve to die if you do. But what does God do with the Ten Commandments? He lumps women in with property. He labels women as property in the Ten Commandments. Is that really what you want to point to for the absolute moral foundation of everything? Where women are property? You really want to do that, Barak? You're a dumb motherfucker. Also, with the whole don't murder thing, it doesn't mean don't kill. This entire video, he's trying to portray the Ten Commandments as being this general rule book for life and everything, for all time. And he says, don't kill. But that's not what it says. It says don't murder, meaning don't murder your fellow Israelite. Because it was very specific for that group of people. It was obviously, if anybody has read the Old Testament, it was obviously perfectly fine for God to command the Israelites to kill people of another nation, to enslave another person. Hey, you know what? That would have been really good to put in the Ten Commandments. After suck God's dick and only God's dick, don't grape anybody. Third, don't keep people as slaves. God doesn't do that, though. No, God doesn't do that at all. In fact, later on in the Bible, in the Old Testament, he lays out an entire system for how to treat slaves, how to take slaves, how to purchase slaves, how to even enslave your own fellow Israelite. Of course, now we wouldn't say, hey, that's not okay to enslave people. In the Old Testament times, especially when the Ten Commandments were penned by God's lightning dick, you could definitely enslave people. So is that okay now? Is that morally good? Is that a morally good thing there, Barak? To enslave another person? To treat your wife as property? To go out and grape people? This guy just simply does not understand what it means to be a morally good person. For Barak Lurie, a morally good person is to blindly follow what God says in the Old Testament, or whatever the old guy dressed up in whatever kind of religious attire tells you that God wants you to do. Apparently, that's what it means to be a good moral person for Barak Lurie. I'm sorry there, Barak, but I'm not that gullible. I'm just not gullible enough to listen to some guy dressed up in whatever kind of religious attire to tell me that it's a good thing to hate homosexuals or to hate anybody in the LGBTQ community. I make my own moral decisions. And if people like Barak Lurie want to tell me that means that I just simply don't have morals whatsoever, then they're obviously not listening to the words that are coming out of my fucking mouth. I know I was incredibly heated today in this video, but I feel like everybody can really understand when somebody is sitting there telling me that I lack morals altogether, or that I shouldn't even have morals, and that I'm just like Hitler, or Hitler was an atheist, or any of these other fucking things. Like, these are just very inflammatory and just shitty things to say about people.
You see, folks, atheists do not believe in morals. They don't even believe in the difference between good and evil. Remember that the next time an atheist tells you that he's a moral person, ask him, why does it even matter to you?
Because I care about how we treat our fellow people, our fellow man and women and others. Like, I feel like that's a very important thing, especially for a social species living in a giant society. These are things that are important. I feel like the way that we have survived is by getting along with each other and by being good to each other. So it would actually make no sense for you to say that I don't believe in morals. I mean, this guy's just getting really repetitive at this point. It's at the very end of the video. I've got it linked down below if you really want to go and watch it. I mean, there's only a few seconds left, but I just really can't take Barak anymore. This guy is just, oh man, this just pissed me off a little bit too much, I think. Anyways, heathens, that's going to be it for today. I feel like Barak is just an insanely bigoted and blinded motherfucker who thinks that atheists are just these immoral people that don't care about whether or not something is good or bad, or that atheists shouldn't care about things being good or bad because we don't believe in a God. And he seems to fail to understand that even his God has commanded the deaths of people, of small children. God has laid down the law that made it okay to grape a woman. God has laid down the law that made it okay to enslave your fellow man. How are these things good there, Barak? Because they're all outlined in your Bible. So I would say that if anybody here is just absent of any kind of knowledge of what morality even is, I would say that it's you, because you are the one that seems to not know what is morally good or bad unless God tells you it's morally good or bad. And that just makes you subject to whoever wants to claim to be the voice of God telling you what is good or bad. If you don't want to be that gullible, if you don't want to just listen and believe and do what somebody else tells you to do, then make your own moral decisions. Make the decision for yourself whether or not something's moral. Is it morally good to hate LGBTQ people just because they are part of that community? No. It's not. That's irrational hate. And I don't think that anybody should be irrational about anything, especially about hating another person. God would say it's good though. But anyways, heathens, if you will, please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think about Barak and his dumbass ideas here. Do you agree with him? I hope you don't. But if you do, let me know in the comments below. And hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. I swear to Christ, I'm not normally this angry. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.